Welcome back. It is episode 47 of the Fantasy Flyer. It is Magic 8 Ball, parts 3 and 4 combined into part D because we had part 1 and then part D. So this is part 2. I'm with Taylor. Taylor, how you doing?
What is up? I can't help but think of the subsection joke we made last time because part
Subsection
part this,
D,
part that. Yeah.
paragraph 9,
Um,
parentheses, dot 36 dash 2. Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah. But we have
Um,
a lot more information this time around than we did last
we
time.
we do have a lot of more information. That is absolutely correct.
You
I
caught
didn't
that,
tell
did
you
you?
I didn't tell you this off recording, but I'll tell you this now. I completely ignored cap casualties because I feel like most teams are almost done.
I realized that like halfway through mine, and I was like, you know what? You're right, and I'm probably just not gonna read any of it.
That's okay. That's all right. We put in work. So yeah, if for part one, if you missed part one, well, let's play this nice little clip for you. Cut to it right now. All right, and we're back. So hope you enjoyed that. But now we are on to Magic 8 Ball Part 2.
Good
So
old
as you,
montage.
that's right, you can never discount a montage. That was a 75-second one. I hope you all enjoyed it of what happened in the last episode. And it was probably most of us just talking, so that's okay. That's all right. Hope you enjoyed it. Anyway, we covered the teams from each conference's North and East last time, and now we're going to do the South and the West. I will start off. I'll do the NFC, Taylor AFC, same as it was. And yeah, part 2, Magic 8 Ball Series. My computer is going to throw me a fit right now because, you know, that's how life works. There we go. The culmination of this rebuild will be next week during our next edition of the mock draft. I just want to let John know that we're going to be doing another episode of the mock draft. They are some of our more popular episodes, by the way, which makes sense because this is where we start to get really curious. Um, the combine, just like we said in part 1, helped us navigate some of these prospects. Draft picks are easier to predict than free agency movements. I think that's pretty safe to say. So we'll go over that next week, but we'll jump right back in with the NFC South. I have of course, Saints, Falcons, Bucks, and Panthers. I don't know what that noise was for. I had to apparently I wanted to fill in space with something that wasn't words. So we'll start with the Saints. They have 17.2 million in cap available as of this writing. I actually think it went down to 14 because of the signing of Jamal Williams, which I did not update. They still have to fill some defensive spots. Defensive line, linebacker. I think tight end would be smart. I know they re-signed Juwan Johnson. Adam Troutman. Adam Troutman was, I think, kept. They have draft picks 29, 40, 71, and then their standard 4th through 7th. Trade assets. There's not really a lot here. I put Carl Granderson, defensive end, Bradley Roby, cornerback. Both cheap contracts you could move on from. Carl Granderson has no dead cap. He's a $4 million contract. Bradley Roby, I believe, is a little over 3 million. But this team is kind of looking for more a defensive side of the ball. I think they got Derek Carr. They got their major improvement. They have a running back that is decent in some capacity, whether it's Kamara, whether it is Jamal Williams. So So we'll leave it to the draft. I mean, they do have some money to sign a complimentary free agent should they need it. The positions they need, you could find a good linebacker still. I don't think defensive lineman or tight end you're going to be go nuts with. You're not going to be amazingly thrilled, but you can get somebody as well on either of those, specifically defensive line for free agency. I think draft and getting some youth here would be smart. You just spent a bunch of money on Derek Carr, 35 million per year. It's best to remember Derek Carr is really not a top seven quarterback in the league. But if you can build a relationship with Chris Olave, Michael Thomas can play more than 12 games. This team could be 500 easy. They've restructured several deals to go from negative 20 million to like 20 million in the green. So wouldn't be surprised to see Jarvis Landry's no longer on the team. Wouldn't be surprised to see them take a wide receiver through free agency either. Could even, like I said, take that linebacker. The team made a stride forward, but I'd say nothing huge. My prediction is the Saints will take a linebacker or a defensive lineman at 29 or trade up and take a more aggressive approach, which is plausible. I think if Kalijah Cansey was to go to 29, it'd be a steal here and maybe take a tight end later in the draft just to slot in behind Juwan Johnson. I have them going 7 and 10 next year. I know a lot of maybe that's not super far out of bounds. But what do you think about their potential record here, Taylor? I just said like you're the first four letters of your six-letter name.
That brings me back. Anyways, okay, quick tangent. I don't know what people were thinking when I was a kid, but a couple times people were like, "Where's your tail?" And I was like, I don't get it. Anyways, Saints 7 and 10.
Oh fuck! I can't believe you've done this.
I think that's reasonable for them. I think that Carr will definitely give them a better chance. I mean, what did they finish last year? Right around there, didn't they?
They were just below that. I want to say 6 and 11.
Yeah, okay. Honestly, I think they could do a bit better than that. Olave going into his second year. Michael Thomas, like you said, if he stays healthy, that's a pretty solid wide receiving tandem. And Rashid Shaheed, another fellow rookie to Olave that was not drafted nearly as high, but definitely showed out. Like they have an okay set of receivers and tight ends. Running back situation could be iffy, but like we said with Jamal Williams, I think that he'll be perfectly fine. So I think 7 and 10 might be undercutting them. Granted, I haven't really looked. I mean, we don't have their schedule, but I haven't really taken into account exactly, like, I mean, at the very least, they're going to play the Panthers, the Bucks, and the Falcons a lot, which all of those teams are.
Yeah,
Panthers are going to take a big step forward, but they're pretty crappy, the rest of them.
yeah. Well, I think the Falcons, just by getting Jesse Bates, they look a little better defensively. Their big hole was pass catching, which is what this team looks like they want to do now.
Mm-hmm.
So if and you didn't really muscle up at wide receiver, you did at quarterback, which Dalton had some good games last year.
Yeah.
I think 3 years ago, if I had said Andy Dalton's going to lead the Saints to a 6 and 11 record in a Tom Brady led division, people would be like, no, get out.
Mm.
So he had some big sparks there that were interesting. I can see 8 and 9.
I could see them breaking 50.
I don't. I don't. Okay, so all right, it depends on what they do with this draft. I shouldn't say I don't. If they, like I said, if they were to take a trade up and get a good edge rusher, let's say, I'll spit one out. How about a late teens Miles Murphy? Right? Spitballing, right? Or they do get Kalijah Cansey, who's a good middle field pressure man.
Mm-hmm.
That makes me feel a little bit better about them going towards 500. Something about this, and again, Derek Carr wasn't so much the problem with the Raiders last year. It was the defense not being able to stop a nosebleed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tough for me to put them up near the above 500 pool yet. I don't think I have many of these teams anywhere near 500, just to be honest with you. And that's because I think this is still, despite the improvements by a couple of the teams, this is still the worst division.
Right.
Just so whoever you're playing AFC wise, there's 4 games you're probably going to lose 3 of. And this defense needs help so much. So if the defense doesn't get anything rolling, it's going to be very, very tough for me to trust in them to go above 500. But we'll see how the schedule goes out. I don't know what division they play, so I respect it. Next team, Panthers. They had 16.1 when I wrote this. And once again, I didn't double check, but I'm pretty sure they're closer to like 20, 15 to 20 now. They still have to fill wide receiver, tight end, linebacker. Well, actually, tight end I can take off of here because it got Hayden Hurst, so I'll take that off. You could draft one. Yeah. Wide receiver, linebacker, cornerback. Linebacker's less needy too since the return of Shaq Thompson, but I'll leave it on there. They have picks 1, 39, 93, a fourth and 2/5. There's no trade assets here. There's no reason to trade anybody. They should be gaining. There's no huge free agent wide receivers that are out there that I would go out of my way. Adam Thielen would probably be the remaining one if you can take him. Give a piece to what appears to be CJ Stroud incoming. Would seem that way. The addition of Miles Sanders was wonderful. I like that. Von Bell helps the secondary a bit. They need more man guys in the cornerback. It's tough to say. I mean, obviously at 1, they're taking Stroud. 39, you could go a couple different ways. I was really liking a tight end there. They signed Hayden Hurst. You could probably still take wide receiver there. A Josh Downs, a Nathaniel Dell, a Keyshawn Butte. But take what they want, really. I mean, the Panthers haven't been aggressive all off season, but there's work to be done. They traded away DJ Moore. They could use a good wide receiver to use the young group of guys. Panthers sacrificed for that trade up. They got number 1, which I wrote. Did you notice when you did you look at this when I wrote the first part of this, the Saints and the Panthers last Wednesday night. No, Thursday night. Before we did our first Magic 8 Ball.
Oh, really?
2 days before they traded up, or 1 day before they traded up to the number 1.
Okay.
And in that, I predicted they were going to. I had to go back and rewrite this entire thing yesterday when I went back and started to edit the document because they did exactly what I thought they were going to do. They took multiple firsts. They moved up and to the top. I put top 4 in there, but for multiple firsts, it makes all the sense.
Yeah.
And they were going to get their quarterback. So I feel a little better knowing that they actually took that step forward. But it seems like CJ Stroud is going to be who they take. Both CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson, the other rumored number 1 pick, great combines. At their second, like I said, I said a tight end here, Kincaid or a Luke Musgrave. You can go away from that with Hayden Hurst, who just showed he's very valuable during his tenure with the Bengals. Defense is not bad. You could see I don't know if an Eli Ricks might be a little early at 39 for the cornerback slot. Cam Smith probably won't fall that far. Keely Ringo probably won't fall that far. So I have them going 6 and 11, but I'm more open to them hitting 500 depending on how they draft from here on out. Defense is the big thing because, like I said, I don't like this division, and like we just talked about, they're going to face the other 3 teams 6 times total. And if you win 5 out of those 6 times, that 6 and 11 can easily become 9 and 8, 10 and 7, and that'll win you a division. So it all depends on how that works. If they can stay healthy, but they have to get the youth train rolling. So I have 6 and 11 right now because they don't have their entire defense filled out and they don't have receivers. Hayden Hurst is the only trustworthy one in my mind. I'm not crazy about Shi Smith or Terrace Marshall. Obviously, they'll both grow again. 3rd year for both going into. But again, this entire division has me upside down until I see how they draft. And they all basically have solid draft capital.
Right. And they still have LaVisca Chenault, right?
Yeah. I want to pretend that he's going to be useful someday.
I mean,
Um,
he's like a Curtis Samuel light or in development. He kind of plays that
Are
role
you sure about that?
He's been playing that gadgety role for the past two teams, Panthers, and then he was drafted by.
every time you say gadget, it makes me think of McCole Hardman, and I'll be damned if that wouldn't be a great guy to sign.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to your point, yeah, their wide receiving core is
Putrid.
inexperienced and not.
Just say putrid.
Terrace Marshall showed out last year. I won't say
4 or
he's
5
still.
plays.
Yeah, I still won't say he's great. I like Laviska Shenault, but he has not. Like he's flashed
Blossomed.
at times, but yeah,
Yep.
he's just not. They have a bunch of wide receiver 2.5 threes.
Right. And that's the
So
problem is you had DJ Moore and then that huge gap and you had no
exactly.
reliable piece. Now the problem is they're all going to be equally as unreliable.
Yeah.
Adam
Yeah.
Thielen and McCole Hardman to me are like, if you're not going to draft one, like obviously youth here is going to be okay, but they're in a position where at 39 they can take a wide receiver and
Mhm.
he will immediately be the one.
Yeah.
And that's stellar for whoever they draft. So
Yeah. I mean, they're in the middle of a rebuild, so 6-11 is a perfectly fine record for what they're trying to do. They're going to have a new quarterback. They're going to probably have a young wide receiver. Like Miles Sanders is probably going to be a little frustrated, and him and Hayden Hurst kind of carrying the team to some degree. But
and these are anti-run defenses that you have, other than the Falcons, which are very mid-pack to, bottom half of the league in rush defense. The Bucks, ninth last year in rush defense. The Saints were, I want to say 12th. I'm close. There's like Miles Sanders is going to be frustrated for 5 games out of the year, 4 games out of the year, and that's a minimum. So
yeah.
And he's not a pass catching back, which is the other thing about Miles Sanders. Great pickup for the run game. He's really not a pass catcher. I mean, you can probably turn him into one, but I see some RPOs in this team's future. Next team, Buccaneers. Now we're getting to some updated numbers because I wrote this this afternoon. The Buccaneers are $13,000 above the cap.
Oh, I thought that was under.
No, that's
Oh,
above. If you're
above.
under,
You
if you're
mean, right?
under, if you're
Yes.
if you're
Yeah.
under the cap, then you have extra money to spend. If you were,
Right.
so they have negative $13,000 compared to the cap, overspent by just a tiny hair. Maybe they'll sell some Baker Mayfield jerseys to the Bucks fans who are off the bandwagon now that Tom Brady's gone.
Yeah.
Spots to fill: safety, cornerback, defensive tackle, defensive line could use some help. They have picks 19, 50, 82, 154. So that's a pick every round, first 4 rounds. They also have 3/5, a 6th, and a 7th. Trade assets still to me is Mike Evans. I understand they don't want to, but you got to start exploring things. The Bucks are missing some underlying pieces compared to last year. They had to cut cap. They don't have a solid 4th wide receiver. Julio Jones is a free agent. They don't have a solid 3rd wide receiver, really, I guess. I mean, Russell Gage is okay, but the defensive line pieces had to be cut, couldn't be brought back, even on cheaper deals. Drafting all the pieces and trying to stave off a full-fledged rebuild is kind of what this looks like. And it's not good. I mean, next year you're going to have a 27-year-old Chris Godwin who you will have to make a decision on to extend or not.
Right.
You're not going to have Mike Evans there, and you will get nothing for him because you won't be able to sign him then. Well, maybe you will because there's a lot of money free, but you're also going to have to deal with the other pieces that will be free agents. You're going to have to fill in for Levante David if you don't resign him. Devin White, Antoine Winfield, both free agents next year. Big contracts for both of them. Well, probably more for White than for Winfield, but you're going to have to pay them money if you want to bring them back.
Right.
This is you're in the middle of the bridge and it's going to get cut from one side. Which way are you going to go? Baker Mayfield was assigned to me that, okay, they're accepting they're going to have to go through at minimum a short rebuild, 2-3 years. But that means getting your money right. And I think that starts with trading Mike Evans. He's 30. He is a dead cap hit of a lot of money. His cap hits a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Get something back for him. Get something before you can't, like, are you going to choose between 31-year-old Mike Evans or 26-year-old Devin White, who's been a monster for your linebackers? And you don't have another linebacker to fall back on because Levante David's out. So, they can draft one here. Obviously, 19, you have some good 19 and 50. You could have some good linebacker options available to you. Some good ball hawks too, which is fine. Great. Build now. I'm sure that's probably in their head. The cornerback slot for their pick at 19, Deontay Banks. Wouldn't be surprised to see him go. Joey Porter won't be available by then if he doesn't. He's not making it past the Steelers, and I'm almost set on that. But you have some cornerbacks that you can slide in there at 19 if you want to go linebacker at 50, and you can fill this in. Defensive tackle, you can get a solid one in the third round at 82. But you're not going to be able to. I mean, that's going to be your building is the draft the next 3 years. And who are you going to put at quarterback next year? Baker Mayfield again?
Right.
Kyle Trask? They might be in the running for the Ryan Tannehill sweepstakes if you want that $12 million burden on you next offseason. Only 3 quarterbacks who are supposed to be free agents are Kirk Cousins, probably going to get extended. Don't see any reason why Minnesota would be unhappy with him. Lamar Jackson, don't have the money for him, even if he if he did want to go there. And then Ryan Tannehill, who is egregiously overpaid right now.
Yeah.
So I think they should at least explore Mike Evans while the free agent pool is not the strongest, because next year I think it changes just a wee bit for the wide receiver position for free agents. Michael Thomas, Curtis Samuel, Tyler Boyd, Paris Campbell will be a free agent again. There's the potential to see a Jerry Jeudy free agency, a Brandon Ayuk free agency, a Calvin Ridley free agency, T. Higgins if he doesn't get extended, Michael Pittman, who should be getting, both of those guys should be extended. Let's be fair. There's some bigger names out next year than this year for free agency in the wide receiver pool. Get him. I mean, you can try and take the money now, but again, you're pulling dollars in 2 different ways. So, I think with Baker Mayfield, Bucks have a little chance of very little chance, not a little chance of winning the division. He's not Tom Brady. The draft to me, the draft feels oddly enough like the most important thing this team is going to do for the next year or two.
Yeah.
And it will dictate what direction the team's going to take. Rookie contracts have to be this team's friend. So that's why I say if you turn Mike Evans into 2 other rookie contracts, right? Trade a great deep ball threat, Mike Evans. Okay. Get a third this year and a second next year, or a third in both years, whatever you can get, because he's expensive and he's only got 1 year and he's 30. It makes sense. Turn it into 2 rookie deals. You're going to save the team money long term. You can probably go out and get another aggressive piece on some side, defensive side of the ball this year. You still have free agency options out there. I don't know what the front office has planned, but I don't see it, obviously.
Right.
So I have them going 5-12 this year, and that is mostly because Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
big year for Rashad White too. I think he is a low key RB2 all year, if not like approaching RB1.
yeah. No, I agree that they should try to capitalize on what Mike Evans currently is and what they can get for him. And honestly, they should probably tank for a QB next season. Like
They don't.
like you said,
What are their other choices to go 7 and 10?
exactly.
Like they're looking at a top 10 pick unless Baker really shows out this year. I
Yeah.
really don't. And Mike Evans to this team, like I said, he doesn't have deep ball value. Baker is not an accurate deep ball thrower. Point blank. I like Godwin here. Good.
Mhm.
He has a solid contract. He's 27. Keep him. K. Dotton, your value just skyrocketed. They released Cameron Brate. You got something there. The defensive pieces are a focus, and Mike Evans doesn't fit what you're now going to have to do.
Right.
2 and 2 is 4 all year round. That's my point on it.
Yeah. No, I don't see why they need to start some sort of rebuild here. There's no reason to even attempt to make the playoffs.
They can stave off a full-fledged rebuild by doing that. Now, there are
Exactly.
probably a couple other ways to do that, right? There's probably some restructuring of contracts. You can potentially trade some bigger name. Like you could arguably trade Devin White and get more value if he signs a contract with whoever you trade him to. Again, long-term value for a re-signed contract to Devin White is a lot higher than Mike Evans because he's younger at an equally valuable position. So, at least as far as to the side of the ball, I say wide receiver is very important to the offense. A lot of offenses in any way. Linebacker, same defense. I think it's a little different for Devin White in that sense. And you could say, hey, he's got a year left. He's 20, 26. He's a monster. 25. He's a monster. Like, is this a place you want to go, Dev? And Devin says, yeah. And the team goes, well, would you talk to him for us about a contract extension? And he goes, yeah. And then all of a sudden, you could probably pull in a second or a first. You can get some big money for long-term linebacker the way he's played.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't do anything, you're going to end up in cap. I mean, I'll call it cap purgatory because you're this. Which way? I don't have money to go this way. I don't have money to go that way. I have my draft pick sitting in front of me. Yay. But now I can only rebuild through this. If you have one avenue to a rebuild, it's going to take long. Point blank. So,
yeah.
Small little note, and I just thought about this. 82 or 154. I know I said defense should be probably 1950 and 82, depending on what positions you put them in. You could take a Stetson Bennett or a Hendon Hooker probably in that fourth round. One of them might fall there.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't hate that.
Yeah, no, and a lot of mocks Hookers, third or fourth round.
There you go. Falcons, next team for me. At the time of writing this afternoon, they had 34 million in cap left, which is very responsible spending.
Mm-hmm.
Still need a cornerback, linebacker, offensive line. They have picks 8, 44, 75, 2/4, a 5th, and 3/7. They don't really have any trade assets. You could potentially try and ship Cordell Patterson, who has 1 year left. I don't think anybody's going to be really super interested in him. I think he's almost 30.
Yeah.
Main way of retooling here, I think finding a good defensive piece at pick 8 will be a start. I now much more like a cornerback going to them at 8. That wouldn't be a bad take right there. I think it's a little, you could see them taking an offensive lineman, but maybe. Peter Skoronski, Paris Johnson. By signing Taylor Heineke, obviously there's room for this team to improve, and they know it. I'm interested to see if this run first style from this team that is, I mean, Tyler Algier was perfectly fine towards the end of the year. Bloom with that, but I want to see if it's scaled back just a little and not be so dominant, like run dominant. Drake London and Kyle Pitts should be threatening weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to see Kyle Pitts return to that rookie season form. I mean, just being an aggressive tight end worth 5 to 7 catches and having 6 touchdowns. Why not? Signing, as far as the defense, signing Jesse Bates, huge for this team in terms of coverage. Man-to-man still needs improvement, hence their cornerback slot. But somewhere in this draft or even free agency, you can find cornerbacks. There's plenty in this draft. There's plenty still available. Take them. Find one. Pay one. I don't know. Do something. Poke it with a stick. Do something. There are plenty of good cornerbacks on the market. I don't hate them trying to take one on like a 2-year deal and just, you have good man coverage traits. Let's push this problem to another draft. Right? Another first round. That's they're in a position where they can do that because they have so much youth on the team.
Yeah.
Right? Because by the time you hit that other draft, now you have another year of experience for all these players that are learning. Algier, Pitts, London. Why not? The main way of retooling is being smart. I guess is the smart thing. Fill the holes. There's plenty of opportunity afforded to the Falcons by draft and their wallet. The team is still rebuilding. However, we should not forget that. I think 8 and 9 is like a fine benchmark for this team this year. Again, you're looking at Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ridder. I am not opposed to this team going over 500, depending on how the cookie crumbles.
Mm.
I don't think they should lose. I don't think they should win less than 6 games in any capacity, barring like some major set of injuries. Obviously, that's an outlier, but they shouldn't be looking at less than 6 or even 7 wins, really.
Yeah,
Because
six
I
to
mean,
nine. I think that's reasonable.
Algier is going to take another step forward. London is going to be very viable. Kyle Pitts, if he returns to form, you now have a pass game and a run game again, and a defense that, other than maybe some holding some runs, like holding opposing running games,
Hmm.
should be solid.
Yeah, I think yeah, probably the biggest question here is Ritter. Like, he was iffy. If they're gonna ride with him, then they got a lot of work to do. But they have the young pieces and the receiving talent for him to and then running back talent for him to make some moves.
One can hope for the Falcons.
Yeah.
Need a little bit of luck. Um, we'll go into the NFC West now. We'll start with the 49ers, which we're going to kind of glaze through them because they did plenty fine last year. They have 11.5 million in cap left. Defensive line, cornerback, safety. They have picks 99, 101, and 102, all third rounders. Third, fourth rounders. So that means that I have 4 4th rounders, 2 5ths, 2 6ths, and 2 7ths. I don't think they have any reason to trade anybody. Team has more or less should run it back. They signed Javon Hargrave. Wonderful. Main way of retooling is do whatever you can to find the missing piece defensively. They have made a name for themselves building pieces on defense to fit their system more or less, become threats. The holes for this team are, I think they're all defense, and I say holes loosely because, I mean, you needed somebody to fill in for a Jimmy Ward, a Charvarius Ward. You need someone to fill in for an Aziz Al-Shahir who went to the Titans. So you need a linebacker, you need couple cornerbacks. Okay, but despite the offense largely remaining the same, it is a fine offense. Let's not forget that. The defense is not D'Amico Ryans. I would say some larger than usual bumps are expected, no matter who they get, but it doesn't mean they can't find their stride later in the year. It's kind of what this team does under Kyle Shanahan. First few weeks, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Javon Hargrave is going to be a huge key, especially for these cornerback. I mean, there's only, Geno Smith and Matthew Stafford are in your division. They don't scramble a lot. Secondary can get a piece or two, and this team will be just fine by year's end. I am okay with them going like a 10-7 as a good prediction. As high as 12 wins, as low as 8, but I see probably above 500 as being almost a lock.
Yeah.
I don't I don't think we really need to talk a whole bunch about it. No,
No. Biggest
no.
question is really quarterback, I think.
Yeah. Do you go with Dams Arnold? Or is it I don't even care about saying the rest of the names. Is it Trance?
Right.
Trance. It sounds like it's Mexican mind games. Trance. That's French.
Yeah, I
That's
was gonna say
French.
that sounds more French to
That's
me.
not yeah. Doug's gonna go learn how geography works. I got 5 minutes. Real well, you know what? Mm, no, we should talk about the Rams a little more in depth. So what we'll do, we'll take our break here. Okay. We'll come back. I'm gonna talk a lot of trash about the Rams. Okay. That's it's not really. I'm not gonna talk a lot of trash. We'll talk a little trash about them. It's a rebuilding show. This is where we build up our friends. Um I have Rams, Seahawks, Cardinals left, and then I will pass it over to Taylor. That's French for Taylor.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, see, I didn't say Spanish. You see how that I quickly learned, and Taylor is going to go over the Titans, the Colts, the Texans, the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Raiders, and the Broncos. I don't know why all of a sudden I became French, but
Yeah.
it's the way it goes. Yeah. If you would do us the kind honors of signing us off for part 1, we'll be right back with part 2. Taylor, hit it.
We'll see y'all on the other side.
And welcome back. Part 2 of Magic 8 Ball, Part 2. Part 2 of Part 2 of Part 3 and Part 4, subsection B, paragraph 9, comma, something, subsection, other crap.
Nailed it. Nailed it.
Perfect. Just call it a show right here. That's it. See you later. We'll pick up where we left off. Rams are next. We're going through the NFC West. Rams currently have 11.2 million in cap. Need to fill wide receiver, cornerback, and linebacker. I say wide receiver because they're trying to trade Allen Robinson, which is not what you should do with this wide receiver core, by the way. You should get them more involved, not put them on their own isle of shame. Trade assets. Tyler Higbee, Van Jefferson, Cam Akers, all really should be considered. I think the most value and the only one someone would want to trade for is Tyler Higbee. All have 1 year left. Guy get re-signed next year. At this point, we have to start addressing the elephant in the room that if this season doesn't get better, these guys are going to be looking at a rebuild. This team needs to find its stride on both sides of the ball. I mean, retooling. They released Leonard Floyd about a week ago to save cap, which just created a hole that needs filling now. Granted, now they won't get, penalized by the NFL. Matthew Stafford needs to find a weapon besides Cooper Kupp. So as much as I'm saying don't trade Allen Robinson because you need to get more people involved, by trading Tyler Higbee, you're also contributing to the problem of not getting other people involved. The defense needs to spark from the middle of the field. Play calling to me was beyond poor. They didn't run the ball. I mean, once they finally, once they realized, we don't have Matthew Stafford, we might as well try it, was actually when the running got decent. And Cam Akers kind of had good, there's potential there.
Yeah.
It was one dimensional up until then, though. So that's
right.
the problem. I say use the cap, go after one of the mini cornerbacks. I think the draft having a lot of cornerbacks, you want that youth and it'll be a lot cheaper. They don't have a first round pick. So I'm hesitant on saying use pick 36, which is your highest value pick.
How many are there?
36. Counted them myself.
36. But last year I had 37.
I just wanted to hit that button because 36. I said 36. So that's all I was just doing. But I don't think you should use your high value pick on a cornerback if there's so many that flood the market. If they had a first round pick and maybe even another third round pick, I'd be like, all right, this is where I would take a cornerback. Youth takes precedence over spending the money because of the impending contracts next year. With the more money you save now, the more you theoretically should have next year. But I don't think that's smart with this. You're kind of stuck,
Yeah.
Yeah. Draft a linebacker. I say that's for sure. There's not a lot of, we're running out of linebackers. Some of these teams are not going to get what they want. I'd say linebacker is thinner both in draft and free agency. Maybe try and get one on free agency there. Maybe draft a corner. See, like you're on the fence. You're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, from a money standpoint. Cheaper obviously would be cornerback free agency, which would mean draft linebacker. Fine. Somewhere in this, you have to find a home for Allen Robinson if you're not going to keep him. And also you need to find another wide receiver who a defense will respect as a ball catcher somewhere. Because right now, I think as a defense, you could literally double cover. Yeah. That's what double cover Cooper Kupp. Say that 5 times fast.
I mean, that is a mouthful, so
Yeah,
I'll hand it to you.
double cover Cooper Kupp. Yeah, no, I can't even say it twice. Anyway, but if you could probably double cover him, and who else?
You have no offense.
Yeah, there you go. Matthew Stafford's not scrambling.
And he hyper focuses on one guy, so
it's been his, and I'm going to just step out on a limb here, and it's a very, very thin and floppy limb. But I think if this season is not a at least competitive season, Matthew Stafford is the first person I'm looking to get rid of next offseason. Why? He holds your cap up. He's not producing. And Cooper Kupp will work with any quarterback.
Right.
Especially if you have another weapon there that somebody will respect on the defensive side of the ball to cover. So It's hard to believe this season may not be a huge step forward for this team, given how atrocious last year was after a Super Bowl win. But I surely have my reservations. My prediction, obviously, the team wants to trade Allen Robinson. Contract is horrendous for his production. They aren't working hard on developing any other pass catcher, and the defense is rather Swiss cheesed. Sometimes you get holes, sometimes you don't. They traded Jalen Ramsey and got something. Do I have their added? I don't have their third round pick, or maybe I do. Is that maybe that's pick 77? Yes, that's pick
Yeah.
77 that they just got from the Dolphins. Um, yeah, I don't know. If the Bucks are staving off a full rebuild somewhat successfully, this team is playing ignoring that it's impending. It seems that way. They haven't even done anything this offseason. Like the Bucks at least made a couple moves. Re-signed Jamel Dean, Levante David they brought back because we can't fill that hole right now. So we'll get a cheap contract for 1 year on a 33-year-old. That's fine. Baker Mayfield will put a band-aid over that gushing water pipe. Like, yeah. The next 6 weeks are huge for this team in terms of what they do between week 7 of this 2023 season and next May. Because if they
Yeah.
don't find something somewhere, here comes this rebuild. And Cooper Kupp's going to be through it because he just signed a huge extension.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's going to be unhappy when the team goes for 4 losing seasons in a row and wants out at 28.
All right.
I like 5-12 for this team.
Yeah.
They could go. I mean, honestly, that's probably more their floor. I don't think they will lose, or I don't think they win less than 5 games, really. Because they didn't have Matthew Stafford for 5 or 6 of these games. They didn't have Cooper Kupp for 2/3 of the season. They still managed to win 4 or 5. So they shouldn't lose, or they shouldn't win less than 5. I don't
Yeah.
see them going much above 7 or 8 though. And that to me doesn't spell that's borderline competitive. Maybe.
Yeah.
Eh.
I mean, I hope they take something from the end of the season when Cam Akers was actually playing well. And they have a lot of holes, but they for sure need a number 2 wide receiver if the offense is gonna.
He said number 2. They do. You're right. I'm just to turn just oh, sorry. I turned 10 years old for 6 seconds. You're right though. Like that's the biggest thing. Allen Robinson was so disrespected in that pass game.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know whether he really doesn't have it anymore or if it's just like the system and Matthew Stafford and the fact that he doesn't look at other wide receivers. I think he kind of he looked and produced a little bit more when they had Baker in there. I mean, I don't think he's gonna if they're gonna do anything, he is not gonna be their number 2, unfortunately for him. They need somebody else.
Yeah. Agreed. Next team up, Seattle Seahawks. They have 12.7 million. And unlike the Rams, who have less money and way more holes, this Seahawks team is starting to look pretty put together. They still have to fill, I think, a defensive line hole. They have an offensive line that probably needs some help. Linebacker, they could use another one. I have safety here, and that's wrong because I forgot. Haven't seen him in a while or talked about him. There's a returning Jamal Adams who will be ball hawking as usual. Yeah, see, you just did it too. That was what I did when I looked at their contracts, and I was like, oh yeah, they have him. Huh. Oh, okay. So they don't really need. I mean, they could take another cornerback. Again, Tyreek Woolen one side, another cornerback on the other side would make this a heck of a secondary.
Mm-hmm.
They have picks 5, 20, 37, 51, 83. So that is 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and a third. They have a 4th rounder, 2 fifths, and then their standard 6th and 7th. I think one spot will be wide receiver. They have obviously Lockett and Metcalf. Marquise Goodwin is gone. I don't think who's there? Drew Eskridge? No. Laquan Treadwell? No. There's not really a steady third option there. The interesting part here is that in 2025, Lockett, I believe, is a free agent. So drafting someone now could actually turn into a solid investment for 2 years down the road. Trade assets, I have Noah Fant, 1 year left on his deal. A lot of potential in the tight ends behind him. I know they just got Noah Fant, but imagine if you got all this for Russell Wilson, who put up that absolute glad bag of a season with the Broncos, and then you flip Noah Fant for like another like second or third rounder.
Yeah.
You're just expanding on the deal from them. Because Noah Fant was utterly disrespected as well in Denver, and then he's actually quite the contributor for the Seahawks team. I have their main way of retooling as being selective. And I say that for multiple reasons. Why? They do have a little bit of cap. They have great draft capital, both this year and next year, and we know it. They have 2 first-round picks next year. If you were able to get another one for Noah Fant right now, well, not first, but like a third rounder, it would just get a lot better. They're in a position to expand at a couple positions. Position to expand it. Anyway, but they have to be selective, in my opinion. This team has some good bones to it. We know that, but the right pieces are needed. The upside for this team is obviously that draft capital. It shouldn't be make this an easy task. Signing Devin Bush, which we talked about in our news show the other day, absolutely loving that signing. If he can follow Gensi Owonsu, it's like don't know if I'm saying that name right. Still, haven't looked. They took on Jaron Reed, the defensive tackle who just came from Green Bay. 2 years, I believe it was 2 years for him. And then Fant and Parkinson, Colby Parkinson, they're both free agents next year. I mean, defensive tackles needed. You can draft a wide or a tight end and a wide receiver later on in this draft and build them both. We know tight ends take a year anyway. It doesn't really matter if it's the second round or the fifth round. It kind of takes tight ends a year. So use that as your bailout spot. You can trade up in this draft. I do not hate the idea of packaging a couple of those picks, one of those players, and moving up a round or two. Just flat out. Just to get a piece if you like a certain defensive lineman or a certain offensive lineman and you need to move. Pick 5 looks like it's going to be edge, probably like a Tyree Wilson. I don't think they'll go cornerback there. That wouldn't make much sense.
No.
You could go defensive line at 20 if Brian Brzee is still there. Don't have that one. 37 and 51 insurance as far as I'm concerned. You've
Right.
won. There is no losing this Russell Wilson trade at this point in my mind.
No.
I just felt like this giant gust behind my ankles because I'm standing up, and I'm pretty sure it was my cats doing their best Flash impression. But those are, as you know, as far as there's really nothing. This team should compete. Like, I put 10 and 7 as their ceiling. No, it's really like their average. They could go 11 or 12 wins. It depends on if Geno can be the Geno we saw weeks 1 through 10 and not the Geno we saw weeks 11 through 17. So,
Right.
prediction, this is the team to give San Francisco a run, but the last 6 games, there's that pause for Geno. Is he the one to lead Seattle to the promised land? I think for them, the promised land is an NFC championship game at this point. Well, I like the defense a lot better this year. If you have Jamal Adams returning, if you fill it in well with the draft, you still have very aggressive mid linebackers. Owosu, Jordan Brooks, I believe is he still around? I didn't check. I felt like he was a free agent, and now I'm starting to think he is. Hold on, let me pull up the cheat sheet because I fooled myself.
He's still with them.
He is still with them. Okay, good.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought that he was not. Okay, good. Yeah, so this team is set up to be very successful at this point. 12 wins is totally in their capability, depending on how the schedule breaks.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just looking at Jordan Brooks. Yeah,
Okay.
it looks like he is a free agent in 2025.
Okay.
Yeah, I honestly I don't have much to add. That's a very good take on them, and they are in a great spot to have
Make another step forward.
take a step forward and give San Francisco a run for their money, like you said. I I don't see how they don't make the playoffs this season, and I'm not going to say I like them as a Super Bowl contender, but wouldn't be surprised if they make it decently far in the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, so you got to talk about the best teams in the NFC is probably still Eagles, Dallas, Vikings are kind of in there, San Francisco, but then you're like Seattle. Really? Like the most all-around team put together all around?
Yeah.
Yeah. Last team for me, Cardinals. They have $22.8 million in cap, and boy, they should spend some of it. Offensive line, defensive line, edge. This is a team that I would expect to make a phone call for Jonah Williams from the Bengals, who has requested a trade. Wouldn't this be just super duper swell with Tyler Boyd being a free agent next year? Wouldn't this be super swell if you were to say, hey, I will give you DeAndre Hopkins and like pick 66. You give me Jonah Williams.
To the Bengals,
Mm-hmm.
DeAndre Hopkins, man, that would
They
be an
want him gone.
insane.
They want him gone yesterday, and we know it.
Yeah, the
And I know
Bengals with him
why.
as a wide receivers and Chase and Higgins.
Well, you got to figure they're now down. As of this moment, they're down a tight end. I expect that to be fixed at the draft.
Mm.
They have picked 29. The Bengals do, I believe. That's your call. I don't know why I'm taking it. You're the AFC. You should know this. Anyway, the Cardinals need offensive line help bad. They were basically their second tier offensive line last year. Wasn't great. Defensive line and edge, yeah, needs help. They have picks 3, 34, 66, 2 fourths, 2 fifths, and a seventh. Trade assets is DeAndre Hopkins, and I know why. Trading and then a free agency bonanza, and obviously pick 3. I think those are that. It all boils down to how they're going to retool this team. It's not going to be complete from my senses. I don't think they can find enough offensive line pieces, get rid of Hopkins, do all of that, and be like able to compete with Seattle or San Francisco. Trading DeAndre Hopkins is what it boils down to for starting this, in my opinion. But the longer this tenure goes on, the less I think Arizona is going to get return for him.
Right.
Hollywood Brown needs an extension next year. Damn cats. Hollywood Brown needs an extension next year, and it's not going to be a cheap one. If you are trading Hopkins now and you probably drafting a third wide receiver for cap reasons, I mean, there's a weak free agency class for wide receivers. You could go out and get a third one. Greg Dortch did fine. He's now in your practice squad again. Pick 3 should fill one of the defensive holes with Jalen Carter basically giving up on football, it looks like. I don't know. It seems like Will Anderson is probably going to be the 3rd overall. It's almost a lock probably at this point.
Yeah.
The offensive line and James Conner need some cohesion just as badly. However, it wasn't thrilling to watch this team last year. It can get better. The question is, will it? Kyler Murray needs to step up as a leader. They need to not trust so much in him to be the scramble guy. Another reason that offensive line needs some help.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and out of all of their control, they need to stay healthy. The first 4 to 6 weeks of the season are going to be lost to Kyler Murray. It looks in any way.
Yeah.
From tearing his ACL so late in last season. So now comes the question of, will they rebound for any sort of contention later on in the year? Predictions. I have 3 of them. 1, Will Anderson is at number 3. 2, Hopkins gets traded right now. I think like a 4th rounder is like where you're at. He's expensive. He's 30, and there aren't a lot of holes for him despite the weak class.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on what you're willing to attach for him for some of these younger pieces. That's why I say Jonah Williams. maybe. The only issue there is that there isn't a lot of cap for the Bengals because of the extensions they need to give. But they figured that out. We want DeAndre. Yeah. Number 3, Arizona gets a cornerback, defensive end, and wide receiver somewhere in the remainder of the draft. Probably cornerback, probably draft actually. Defensive end, Buda Baker will also be a free agent next year. So draft one now. Defensive end, need some line help. Wide receiver, again, you can go in one of the 4th rounders. You can take one, or you can try and take a cheap free agent shot. Perfectly fine. I have them going like 6 and 11, 7 and 10. And again, you got to remember that's probably more mid or ceiling because there's no Kyler Murray for at least a third of the season, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to your point about Hopkins, like they kind of missed the boat on him. I don't know if they're asking too much or what's going on there, but people's cap space is going down. They're starting to make plans for what they're doing in the draft. They've already taken other wide receivers. Yeah, I don't think, like, just looking at cap space wise, Bears, Falcons, Packers, Cowboys, Colts, Raiders, Patriots. I mean, he's not going to go back to the Texans.
He's been brought up as the Cowboys, like going to the Cowboys, and I don't hate that either.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't gotten to teams that make more sense. Those were just teams that actually have the cap space. The Cowboys have like what, 12-ish?
Yep, sounds about right. But they are.
No, I'm wrong. They have 24.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing: it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, they are down to fill. Like the only hole they really need to fill now is wide receiver, maybe safety and corner. Not even cornerback. They took Gilmore. They're, being a Cowboys fan, knowing their roster, you could take a defensive lineman and a wide receiver. Those are like your 2 holes you got to fill. So,
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter. I think they fit well. It just depends on what they're willing to give up.
Exactly.
They just got handed a bunch of compensatory picks. I think they had like the 2nd or 3rd most compensatory picks given to them.
Mhm.
Take 2 of the 5ths and a 4th. I think, well, they traded one of the 5ths for Gilmore, but trade a 4th and a 5th or something like that to it. Just honestly, I don't hate it. Is he going to be great? He's not going to be the DeAndre Hopkins he was 3 years ago.
No, but last season he was still very solid.
Right. And he's someone you can throw the ball to 7, 8 times, just like CeeDee Lamb.
Mm-hmm.
Give some space and pressure to your young tight ends who you're apparently going to build. Peyton Hendershot, Jake Ferguson.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, go after Hopkins. Relieve the Cardinals of their pain.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't hate that at all. And maybe I'm wrong in saying this, but if I'm any of these other teams' GMs, I'm kind of sitting back and waiting until it seems like people are going after Hopkins because, like you said, it's only going to get easier to acquire him.
It's already like the announcement was, it wasn't the announcement. That's it. The sources were releasing, they're going to try and trade Hopkins. They're actively searching. That was like a week after the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Where has that got us? Well, here we are a month later. Nothing, because nobody's like, all right, he's 30. He has a bunch of this money that you signed him onto a deal for. Why would we give you a 3rd rounder or a 2nd rounder for that? And there's a good chance that he could end up getting, it could be very similar to an Amari Cooper type deal.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a 6th rounder. That's what you're going to get for him because he's expensive. And Cooper was younger and cheaper.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't. Hopes up for the Cardinals. Rondale Moore and Hollywood Brown. And then some 3rd weapon. Small little tidbit. My last thing I'll say before I pass it over to you. Isaiah McKenzie, who just got released. Hey.
Yeah.
1 year, $2 million with incentives. You can go up to 3.
Don't hate it at all.
2 year and do the same thing. I don't know. But yeah, that's going to end all of my Magic 8 Ball for the NFC teams. It is now up to.
Well done.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yes. Round of applause. Yes. Let me get that. Thank you. Thank you. Now I'll pass it on to Taylor, who will have the AFC South and the AFC West. My good sir.
Thank you. Let's kick it off with the Jags, who finished pretty strong last season. They are currently standing at 6.4 million. I'm pretty sure I pulled that up earlier today. So
I think you're right.
yeah,
I looked at it too.
yep. Um, so so that's actually much better than last time. And I mean, this is like what, a week ago at least. The 8th, I think, is the last time they were at negative 17.9 million. So they've made some decent moves. Spots they need to fill, guard, center, DBs. And they actually have some decent picks. They have the 24th, the 56th, the 88th, and then 2 4s, 3 6th, and a 7th. So they're sitting in a decent spot. They trade wise, I put Calvin Ridley here. I don't think they're gonna do that, but they showed that what they have was relatively serviceable. So if they wanna try to get a younger talent, then they could move on from Ridley, who hasn't even played for the team, which is why I don't see that happening. Again, I don't see this happening either, but
If
go ahead.
I will throw in something for Ridley. If he is not with the team into 2024, the Falcons get a pick back. And if he's
Oh.
not with the team into 2025, the Falcons get a lower pick back. And I don't remember what it was, but I remember when the trade happened, there was a clause that said if he's signed, I can't remember if he wasn't signed or if he was signed. I think if he was signed. So if he is signed with them into 2024, they get a pick back. If he goes into 2025, gets a higher pick.
Okay.
Now that I spoke myself through it, I remembered. So onward you go.
Yeah, well, I think they obviously will try to give it a try this season, and then we'll see what happens in 2024. Another guy, Clavon Chason, just because I think they could get some value there for him. And I won't say they're underpaying him, but they have a decent contract on him, I believe. So they might be able to get something for him. Aside from that, they have, like I said, pick 24, 56, maybe even 88. They could move some of those picks. I don't really see that happening because I think they're in a decent spot. And because they don't have a lot of cap space, unless they make these trades, which, like I said, I don't see them happening, then they're kind of looking at the draft and that moves into the next part, their main way of retooling. They might be able to get 1 or 2 cheap free agents with that cap space. But yeah, looking at the draft, probably their main way. So with the draft in mind, at pick 24, probably going to go DB. Guard is not a bad selection here as well. It kind of depends on who falls to them. Somebody like Deontay Banks, Osiris Torrance, Cam Smith, maybe Emmanuel Forbes, but those first 3 I think are better value there. And like we've been saying, it's a deep DB class. So grabbing a guard early might be the smarter move. So, and then yeah, so if they grab like Osiris Torrance at 24, which he might not be there, but if he is, that's phenomenal value, I think, for them. Then they're looking at DBs at 56 and somewhere along the line, 88, 4th round, grabbing a center. I think they could potentially be a team that goes after a young tight end. I don't think one of the top 3 or 4 ones. They have Evan Ingram, but he's only on it's only a 1, or is it a 2-year?
There's franchise tag. So it's 1 year.
Right. Okay. So
This
that
would be a spot in like that one of those 4th round picks. Tight ends take a year, 2nd to 5th.
exactly.
And honestly, I like Osiris Torrance at 24. He should. I shouldn't say should. There's a lot of teams that
It's
need
like
guards,
borderline, yeah.
especially 16 to 21. Then there's a lot of teams that need guards.
Yeah.
But if he's not, yeah, defensive back, take another guard at 56, maybe even another defensive back at 88.
Right.
And then you have a tight end you can take and build behind Evan Ingram. And then all of a sudden
Exactly.
you don't need, not to say you don't need, because Evan Ingram played well, but that's a great take.
Yeah, I mean, again, hopefully he plays well again this season, and unfortunately that means for them that he's going to cost them some money, and they're not looking great cap space wise right now. And moving forward, I can't imagine it getting too much better. So, yeah, grabbing somebody cheap would be nice for them. I have their record 10-7.
Like
We saw them finish strong, and I think that they'll take a bit of a step forward, especially with getting some more pieces. Moving on to the Titans, they have made some moves, so they've actually gone down in cap from 23.5 to 17.3 million. Like we've been talking about, Ryan Tannehill is a large aspect of their cap. So they're paying way too much for what they're getting from him. So I don't know if they'll be able to restructure him. That would be amazing for them. But that's a bit of a problem for them right now. They do have some solid picks. 11, like that's a very good pick. 41, not too shabby, and even 72. They could get a lot of value there with those first three picks. And then they have a fifth, sixth, and seventh spots they need to fill. Beyond Treylon Burks, they don't have too much in the wide receiving department. So they need a wide receiver, they need a tackle, they need some edge. I mean, there's definitely other spots they could fill, but those are kind of their top three trade assets. They've been kind of talking about trading Henry. I think that would be a good move for them because they just they need to do at least somewhat of a rebuild, if not, kind of start. Yeah, they just need to start thinking about a rebuild because they're kind of digging themselves deeper with especially with the Tannehill situation. I have him as a potential trade asset. I don't think at this point what we've seen happen in the QB market that anybody's going to go after him. So, and
Right.
especially with his cap, we'll see where that turns out. But I don't think that's going to happen this season. So main way of retooling, like they have some decent cap space left, so they could still go after some free agents. That 11th pick, they could do a lot with that. Even the 41st pick, like I said, so they're going to get some good draft value. But I think with the 17 that they have left, they're actually, I don't know what top. There's actually a decent amount. They're top 15 in cap, so there's some other teams that still have like 20 plus. So yeah, looking to the draft. Like I said, Treylon Burks, even Kyle Phillips, the fellow rookie, he even did decently. So he could be. I have him as like a wide receiver 3. Maybe he improves, but I think that's kind of where he sits. So they need like another. If they could get somebody better than Treylon Burks, we don't know what he's going to be yet. He flashed. He had some injury concerns. If they can get somebody better, that would be amazing. If they can get a solid wide receiver 2, then I think that puts them in a decent spot. I think at 11, honestly, they'll go edge. Maybe somebody like Miles Murphy or Lucas Van Ness. And then at 41, they could get some nice value there for a wide receiver. Jalen Hyatt, Josh Downs. If they want to wait even longer, they could get somebody like Butte, Tillman, Marvin Mims. They have some opportunities here to get a solid edge, maybe even a tackle at 41, and then wait on some other guys that drop. I mentioned Marvin Mims. I think he's an underrated talent in this class that could be a solid number 2.
There's a lot of potential there. The only problem is the Titans need to use their wide receivers.
Right.
I see you have the record as 8-9. I think that's more of their ceiling. The playbook for this team flips to the same 8 to 10 pages.
Right.
And 6 to 7 of those pages are Derrick Henry draw.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's not a lot of I don't have a lot of trust in them to build wide receivers yet. Now, next year maybe. You get someone else in the quarterback. I don't know why they don't trust Tannehill as much as they do, or as much as they should. I like the idea of trading Henry. I said this. We were talking about our first set of off-season shows, and I said exploring trading Derrick Henry starts now.
Mm-hmm.
Your rebuild starts now for next year. This is not a 1-year thing. You won't do it because you aren't fully together. There's no piece you can carry over besides Treylon Burks, really. Ryan Tannehill should not be brought back on a large contract, which will help
No.
them. Derrick Henry is probably not going to get the money he wants from you. Send him somewhere else. I know that sounds crazy, but we saw the Cowboys just end it with Ezekiel Elliott.
Right.
Same thing's going to eventually happen with Derrick Henry. You just have to suck it up, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
And your
And I'd
defense
rather
is
get something for him than
whole.
release him.
Yeah. And same with Mike Evans. This same concept as Mike Evans, like I said. And the defense is just, oh dear. I do want to throw out at 11. They could very much ruin not the Jets, but I feel like maybe the Commanders. They could take a tackle at 11
hmm
because that's right where you get into where Peter Skoronski and Paris
Exactly.
Johnson
Yeah.
are. Lucas Van Ness fits very well with this team though, and I don't hate that pick either. I think it's one of those two spots. They don't use wide receiver enough to take him in the first. So
No.
I like overall. I like that. I like that magic 8-ball. Good sir.
Yeah, I had them at 8 and 9 simply because I think Vrabel and the coaching staff they do a good job. But I do agree that they have their troubles ahead.
Yeah, there's some waiting waters.
Yeah. Looking at the time left, we shall call it here, and we'll pick it back up in part 3.
Let's do it, good sir. Am I signing out now?
Oh, let's do it.
See you on the flip side. Welcome back. It's part 3, episode 47 of the final part of our Magic 8-ball series. Taylor's doing his thing right now with the AFC South. I'm gonna let you pick back up with the Colts.
Let's do it. So the Colts
Are bad.
have
All right, moving along. No.
The Colts have managed to get up to 24.1 million in cap space from 12.7, so that's looking pretty solid for them. Spots they need to fill, obviously they have a QB void since good old Andrew Luck. They have some offensive line issues, which is so weird because 2 years ago they looked amazing and we thought they were going to be able to do it again, and then last season it just didn't pan out for some reason, injuries, what have you. I don't know why I have that as their only 2 needs. I feel like there's definitely more. I mean, they lost Paris Campbell. They should probably get another wide receiver. They do have
They
your
need
boy.
they need a linebacker now.
Yeah.
Bobby Okereke leaving. They did sign Samson Abukum, which will replace Yannick Ngakoue, who, by the way, free agent still. Surprised. He should find a home quickly. I would think a lot of teams need defensive line help. I don't know why he's still a free agent. Bidding wars. Anyway, wide receiver would not hurt. Yeah. It's basically Pittman, Pierce, and Doolin right now, and I mean the first 2 are okay. I don't know if I trust the third.
Right.
But other than
Although,
that, they're actually not too. Now they're going to need a cornerback.
mhm.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
need that one.
Weirdly enough, Doolin has a more expensive contract than Pierce.
Pierce is a rookie on a rookie deal. They just re-signed Doolin.
Oh, I thought Doolin was also okay.
Nope, they just brought him back literally days ago.
Okay.
He was an unrestricted. He was a UFA.
All right. Somebody I do think they're gonna move on from. I mean, he's not that expensive, but they have what the heck is his name? But they're probably gonna move on from Mo Alley Cox because they have Jelani Woods and Kylan Granson. Those 2 guys played very well for their rookie season. Mo Alley Cox is a big dude who has, I won't say shown flashes, but kind of shown what he can do with his body. Beyond that, I think the other 2 are more talented and they could save 3 million if they part ways from him. We'll see though, because we're kind of already past the point where they may have done that. So their picks, obviously they have number 4. They have 35, 79, a 4th, 3/5, 2/7. Trade assets. I don't think they're gonna. Well, they could. No, I don't think they're gonna trade that 4th. But they have some other picks they might be able to work with. I put here doubtful, but asset wise, JT or Pittman. I don't see it happening. If they can
I
get
don't either.
if they can get a QB, then granted it's going to be a first year young quarterback, but they could have a better showing than last season. So yeah, I think their main way of retooling is going to be a combination of free agents and drafts, since they do have the 24 million in cap space, grabbing a couple of veterans to sort of help shore up this team a little bit would be nice, especially on the O-line, like you talked about some of those defensive positions. But with pick 4, I think they have a solid shot at Richardson. I don't think this is, hot take, but I think Stroud and Richardson are kind of the top 2 quarterbacks for me, and Bryce is kind of the number 3 simply because he had his size. He's a solid quarterback from what we saw in college, a very
Yep.
smart quarterback, but size wise, he's a little concerning. And I don't think we've talked about this, but he weighed in at what, 204? And before that, they saw him at like 185. 204, he didn't do any of the drills. He's not going to
Yeah.
play at 204. He's going to be down around like 190. And he's 5'10 ish.
Yeah.
So anyways, that could mean that they end up with Bryce. I don't see that happening. So I think that they might end up with Richardson, which I don't know if he's the best fit for them, but he's an incredible talent. So I think that would be great for the organization if they can use him properly.
Right.
So yeah, pick 4, possibly Richardson. Pick 35, shoring up that O-line, somebody like Darnell Wright. They could even wait till 79 for someone of more value, and then they could go, like you were saying. I think that they'll get linebacker probably in free agency, so I don't know if that's what they'll do at 35. We were
I'm
talking
trying to
about,
look up some free agents. My computer is not working because I have a couple ideas and I can't remember what they are.
We talked about this being a very deep defensive back class, so that's another solid option that they could get at 35 or 79. I think that wide receiver wise, they're probably going to wait until 79 or later. Those 3 5th-round picks they look for some value there, maybe the 4th-round pick. I don't think they're going to take anybody with their 4th or 35th pick. Like I said, maybe the 79th they can find some value. We've been talking about maybe Marvin Mims, Butte, Tillman
Man.
falling down there. What do you got?
There's some really good options for this team. Leonard Floyd, linebacker spot, just released less than a week ago. They're probably not in the Bobby Wagner running. Cornerback, Shaq Griffin, Ronald Darby wouldn't be horrible to fill in that slot. Nice cheap deal there. Defensive line, Shelby Harris, Poona Ford, Akeem Hicks. There's some stout defensive lines. Oh, and Miles Jack is an interior linebacker who is also now a free agent. He was just released, played very well in Pittsburgh. Man, like this, you got 24 million. Go get somebody.
Yeah, exactly. No, they're in a good spot. And I don't know what they're going to do with Kenny Moore, a cornerback who, as far as I can tell, has no dead cap. So that would save them 8.1 million if they got rid of him. So yeah, like you said, there's a handful of good cornerbacks out there right now. Unfortunately, with the young quarterback, so I have their record at 6-11. I think
Fair.
that's
fair.
I won't say that's their ceiling though. I think they
No.
could do better,
Mm-mm.
but
Not in this division.
Right. But the young quarterback is going to be, he's going to be working through getting acquainted with the NFL. So there's going to be some growing pains there.
Right. I'm with it.
Moving on to the Texans. They're also in a decent cap space. They have 22.5. That's actually down from 41.7, but still, that's a great spot to be in. They've made some decent moves. They obviously need a quarterback. They need a center. They need some defensive linemen. They do have a lot of other needs. Those are kind of their top three. Wide receiver. They've made some moves there. I don't think that they have their number one. I mean, obviously they have Brandon Cooks, but he's been talking about wanting to get out of there. I don't know if his tune is going to change now that he's seeing how the team's shaping up, but I think that unfortunately he's just butting heads with them kind of at this point. They have the second pick, so they have a solid option at quarterback. They have the 12th pick. We'll get into it later when I get to the predictions, but like that's incredible to have those top two picks right there, being within the top 15. They have the 33rd pick, the 65th, the 73rd. Those are all in the top three rounds. They have a fourth, 4/6, and 3/7. Some of those are compensatory. They have quite the slew of picks here. They can trade some of those. They can, get great value, what have you. So trade assets picks, Brandon Cooks. I threw Jerry Hughes and Christian Kirk here. Christian Kirksey, sorry. I don't think that Hughes or Kirksey are going to be on the trading block.
Cooks for sure.
Cooks for sure, yeah. But Hughes and Kirksey, I think they might try to restructure, or they'll just kind of ride with them. They're kind of in positions where if they were to move on from them, they could save $5 million each. But I don't think their contracts are that bad considering the market for their positions. So main way of retooling, like I said, they have solid amount of cap. They could grab some people in free agency. I think that they need to figure out what they're doing in terms of a trade with Cooks, because
it's gonna be tough for that to come to fruition.
But once they can get that out of the way, I think that really gives them a clearer vision of what they're doing with the team, especially at wide receiver. But they are in a great position to continue to acquire young, cheap talent. They have those high picks, like 33 and up. They already have a bunch of young talent. So getting, Young or Stroud, if they so choose and they want to go Anderson, whatever, I'm fine with that. So at number 2, getting a QB. At number 12, probably going defensive line, maybe somebody like Miles Murphy. I didn't go into what their 33rd pick would be, but I mean, they could grab a wide receiver there. 65th, they could grab a wide receiver. And
they need a tight end still.
That crossed my mind.
Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, and honestly, like pick 65, they could get, I don't know, they might be able to get Washington there.
Yeah.
And then finding a center somewhere along the line. They have, like I said, a ton of picks. They can fill in, and honestly, like they can fill in positions they need. They can start thinking about their future. Like they're in a pretty decent spot here.
Right.
Unfortunately, I think that they're so I have their record at 5-12. I don't think that they take too much of a step forward. They just, honestly, another piece that I didn't list here, running back. Dameon Pierce had a great rookie season, but he is a 1-2 down back.
Don't stretch it.
Yeah.
No. What I mean is I disagree with you.
Oh, okay.
You have too many holes.
Yeah.
You're pushing too much into one. I think honestly, adding tight end to this is probably tough because you need defensive pieces beyond what we see here. Quarterback is fine. You can pick up a defensive lineman at 12 or 33, tight end somewhere in there. The first 5 picks, you can still get a running back in the 4th round. I don't know why you wouldn't keep letting Dameon Pierce flourish.
I mean, I would love that for sure. And yeah, I don't think that they need to. But I think, like, let's say A-Chain falls to them in the 4th, which I think he's more of a 3rd rounder, but if he falls to them in the 4th, I don't hate that at all. I mean, maybe if they want to go, I'm trying to remember how involved he was in the passing game, but I feel like he was a pretty decent pass catching back. But if they want to get somebody in the pass catching game, a young talent, they could do that easily. Like you said, they do have a lot of holes to fill, so it's not a necessity.
Yeah.
So yeah, 5-12. I don't
Another
see
building quarterback. Like
exactly.
it is what it is. Like I
And
wouldn't expect anything otherwise.
I won't say that's their floor. I think they could potentially do worse, but I think that's sort of in the middle-ish ground. I don't know that they do better than 7-ish wins.
That's fair.
Maybe 8. Moving on to the AFC West with the Super Bowl champion Chiefs. They
Do we need to talk about this one?
yeah.
Do we
So
need to?
the only
They've-
thing, honestly, that I really would want to talk about with them is like, do they actually go wide receiver in the draft, or have they just proven to themselves that they can get it done? Like they have they have Tony, they have Sky Moore. I don't know that wide receiver is that much of a need for them
I've said
because
that.
yeah,
I've said that. And to a certain extent, if there's a great one available at 31, you're probably going to take it. But beyond that, don't stretch yourself. Fill your holes that you need. It's
yeah,
mostly defensive. We know that they
exactly.
struggled the first half of the season. They just signed Drew Tranquil today, who I
Mhm.
love that. He was a huge run block for the Chargers last year. Got him on a great one year, $5 million deal. They took a safety in Mike Edwards today. Perfect, great. Fills the hole left by Juan Thornhill. Um, cornerback, edge. Yeah, go back, run it back.
Yeah,
Don't complicate things. I know you have more picks than that, but
right.
you don't. I mean,
They do actually have some decent picks. I mean, they have what 31st, 63rd, 95th, 2 fourths, a fifth, 2 6,
yeah,
3 7. So
and they have cap.
yeah,
They
they
have
have
15 million
14.9.
in cap.
Yeah.
The smartest thing they did at this point was actually putting a front-loaded contract for Patrick Mahomes.
Hmm.
We have the
Yeah.
cap now. We don't know if we will in 2 to 5 years.
Yeah. No, I think that they're in a great spot. Like I said, in my notes here, like a lot of cheap young contracts, which is awesome for them. They can continue to do that with these picks. Chris Jones, that contract is the only one that like if they were to get rid of him, they could save 21 million. I don't
Yeah.
know what they're going to do there, if they're going to restructure him, if they're going to leave it as is because they're in an okay spot, but maybe in the future that's something that they'll need to deal with. I have them going defensive line at 31st, but
Yep.
they could go wherever they want. Because 63rd pick they could still get somebody fine enough. Like we said, Mahomes get it done with any sort of wide receiving core. I do have them taking a slight step back. They were 14-3. I have them at 12-5. I think that's more of their floor though.
Yeah, that's potential. Their defensive line is going to have some holes for a little bit, but
Yeah.
yeah, there's nothing really more to go on here with, man.
Yeah.
I think this is a good team. It's going to be a good team.
Yeah. Oh, MVS they could save 7 million there. I don't know that they move forward
I
with
don't
him at that contract.
if they drop him, they need a wide receiver, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I don't think you can trust in Justin Watson that much.
no. I just don't think MVS
currently fifth
is
wide
worth
receiver.
what they're paying him right now.
Well, he could be now. You don't have Juju in his way. Or
Yeah.
Hardman.
That's true. Moving on to the Chargers, who are also in a decent cap space at 20.9. They actually came up from negative 6.4 million, so that's pretty solid for them. Spots to fill. Some places say that they need wide receiver. I put that as a question mark. I don't think that they're like that is not a huge need for them. They're decent. They still have they restructured Allen and Mike Williams. They need a tackle, they need linebacker, they need cornerback, and they definitely. I'm trying to remember. They have young tight ends, but nobody that really showed out, and they no longer have Gerald Everett. So
Can I scare you for a second? Because we're about to talk about Austin Eckler.
I was just gonna say I have him. I have RB as a question mark. I didn't put it in here.
No, well, okay. So Eckler wants to find a trade partner, right?
Right.
Because they don't want to give him the extension, or maybe they don't want to give him the extension, or whatever their situation is. You find a home for him, right? And you take Bijan at 21. I think you've
That's
talked
in my
about it.
notes here. Yeah.
Yep. And by the way, Chargers instantly up there on Chiefs level, in my opinion, at that point, if they can fill in the holes. For
Mhm.
Eckler, you're getting a first rounder back. Some really good spots that he could go. Towards the top end of the draft would probably be rather tough to navigate one of those picks away from somebody, but you could get a second this year and a first next year or something along those lines. That
Maybe.
wouldn't surprise me at all. If you were able to pull in Bijan to this team, how I mean, how are they not? How is that and the Chiefs not the AFC Championship game?
Yeah. Right.
I mean,
Um,
almost literally.
yeah. No, I mean, I have Austin Eckler as a trade asset literally because he's been saying that. And honestly, I feel like that's kind of a bit of a relief for the team because running backs are a position that people don't want to pay. And it's unfortunate for those players, people that play that position, but it is kind of the way of the league, unfortunately, because you can find someone like Dameon Pierce and they will fill in perfectly fine. Bijan Robinson is a otherworldly talent that at 21, if he falls to you, which it is pretty likely, but honestly, somewhere between 10 and 25 is probably where he's going to go. If he falls to you, you just hit the jackpot and you already got rid of Eckler and you're not in this weird position now. Like you got something for Eckler
Right.
and now you have this otherworldly talent. So yeah, I have main way of retooling the draft. Granted, they do have a lot of cap space. They can fill in with some vets. I have exactly like I said here. If they trade Eckler, pick 21, grabbing Bijan would be phenomenal. If
Oh
not,
my
then
God.
what?
Okay, so I'll just real quick. I'm not going to go too deep into this because this is all hyperbole. Austin Eckler is currently at the end. Next year, he would be a free agent. He had a 4-year, $24.5 million deal. He will be 28, which is probably why they're very hesitant to sign him.
Mm-hmm.
May I introduce to you the $15.4 million that the Bills currently have available?
That would be
and a 27th or 20, I think it's 27th overall first round pick. Now, at this point, right, you look at their spots that they have. They need cornerback, linebacker, tackle. Don't think you're getting a tackle there that you really want to spend that type of draft capital on. That's more of a 54, 85. 21, you take Bijan. At 27, you can take any number of cornerbacks.
Mm-hmm.
You can potentially get your hands on a wide receiver should they slip, which they're predicted to slide off the board with you at 21. So if you take Bijan, you are probably creating your own wide receiver at 27.
Yeah.
And Keenan Allen is not long for this team, despite how much they want him to be.
Mm-hmm.
Hypothetically.
I like that for both teams a lot. Yeah.
Right. I'm literally swimming right now in ideas in my head and trade ideas. So I just wanted to throw that. I just wanted to look up his contract. He is 27. The Bills would even if they don't extend him, right?
Yeah.
Take him for a year. Will he give up 27 for that? Probably not without another pick coming back with Eckler, but we'll give you a third rounder next year and Eckler. You give us 27 this year.
Yeah.
Oh. Just spit things. Onward
no,
you go.
Totally. And to your point about cornerbacks, like assuming that they at this point I don't see how they keep Eckler, but anyways, cornerback, I have them like, and if they did get that 27 pick, they could still do this, but I have them going after Deonte Banks or Cam Smith at 21. They could potentially do that at 27 as well.
Yeah.
And then I just wrote here, like, I doubt it that Porter Jr. makes it to them at this point.
Yep.
And then honestly, like I was saying, tight end, they could snag a tight end at 54, 85, or if they want to wait, and this is a relatively deep tight end class. So if they want to sort of develop somebody from the 4th or 5th round, they could do that too. I have their record. Go ahead.
I think they go. No, you finished because I think they re-signed. Who did they resign? I thought
Is
they
it
re-signed.
Parham?
I thought they re-signed Parham today.
That's yeah. Like I said, they have somebody. I don't know how old he is, but he's He's
He's
not
young.
too old. Yeah.
Yeah, he's 25. I want to say 26.
So he could sort of still be developing, and I'm kind of underrating him. Yeah, at that point, like him versus a fourth, fifth rounder, I don't know that they're getting somebody that's too much better. But
Right.
anyways, I have them at 10-7 right now. Honestly, that felt a little low, still feels a little low, but I think that's, kind of giving some wiggle room depending on what happens with Eckler, if they're able to get Bijan, what have you.
If Bijan lands with that team, he is
Just yeah, the
a
skyrockets.
he's a in his rookie year redraft leagues 1-4 to 1-8.
Yeah.
Jefferson in there, um, Hill somewhere up there, McCaffrey. He's
Mhm.
for a rookie, he'll be easily mid first round.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Love
mean,
it.
honestly, like wherever you were planning to draft Eckler, at the very least, that's where I would go after Bijan.
Yeah.
Um, moving on. You're good with the Chargers?
Yeah, I think 10-7 actually feels about right.
Okay.
Again, there's gonna have some new pieces there that'll be moving.
Right.
I'm very impressed that Khalil Mack still exists, and that is he or did they release him?
I
Hold
did
on.
not see anything about that, but yeah, let me see.
I have their entire no, they did not release him. I
Okay.
was about to say I had their roster up on the other screen. Um yeah, so with him being there, I mean there's some new defensive pieces. Nasir Adderley retired
Hmm.
today or yesterday. So they need a safety. Eh.
Yeah.
Defense will be holding up other teams will still kind of be the thing. They are in a very tough division. Raiders, Chiefs,
Yeah.
not the Broncos, but there's if they have there's opportunity there. It depends on what they get back for Eckler. If he was to sign a deal with whoever he went to, they would get so much more back for him because he's just a top 4 running back in this league,
Yeah. Great
especially
pass
pass catching.
catching, really. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, moving on to the Raiders. They still have 24 million in cap. They were up at like 39.7, but they're still in a great spot. Um, I still have spot to fill as QB, and that's kind of thinking
I
to the
don't hate it.
future.
Yep.
Yeah. Jimmy G, he signed a 3-year deal. Um, so I think with this seventh pick, they could go after somebody like Levis if he falls there, and I don't see why he wouldn't. Granted, is it, and I think that's actually a pretty good move because I don't think they're going to be in a spot where they could go after some of the more talented top end quarterbacks next draft season. So yeah, quarterback, offensive line, defense, they really need to shore up. So DBs is a huge thing here. Honestly, some other defensive positions that they should go after. They have that seventh pick, the 38th, the 70th, the 100th, which they
They
got
don't have they. Oh yeah, that's right. They do. That's right.
for Waller.
I had it backwards. Yep, you're right.
Yeah, they have a fourth, 3/5, 2/6, 2/7. Um, I put Renfro as a trade asset because of the acquiring of Jacoby Myers. Renfro is honestly, he's borderline wide receiver 2, very solid wide
A lot
receiver
of teams.
3.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just don't think that they need him. And they could find some value in the draft if they want to fill that
A lot.
position. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think that that's a perfectly fine trade asset for them. They have picks that they could trade, but I don't think that they should because they have a ton here that they could get a lot of young talent, and they're in a position where Devonte Adams is older, and I haven't looked at his contract, but I can only imagine that it's not going to be great for them in a couple of years. That honestly, that's probably their biggest problem. Trying to think of their other big names. But anyways,
Who
I go ahead.
Adams is averaging 28 million, 65 of it's guaranteed through 2027.
Yeah.
Man has
Oh.
a chunky deal.
Yeah. Other big names, Chandler Jones,
Mhm.
Colton Miller. So they have some money kind of tied up in those guys. Crosby, Josh Jacobs, he's going to be, coming off his franchise tag, so they got to figure that out. So yeah, retooling via the draft, but they have the capital to sign some solid free agents. And honestly, they really should consider, some defensive backs, maybe some like a linebacker or honestly offensive line if they can find that in free agency. But I think that beyond that seventh pick, which I mentioned, Will Levis, they should really be looking at those DBs and O lines at 38. They could probably. Oh no, that's not right. I said.
Let me play into your pick because you wrote names for pick 7 in case they don't go
Exactly.
quarterback, and that's perfectly fine. If I am the Buccaneers, okay, we just went through them about an hour ago. If I'm the Buccaneers and I have this 19 and I see there's two teams that are on either side of me at pick 19 that could use back-to-back picks, being the Lions and the Seahawks. One at 5, one at 6. Lions have 18, Bucks have 19, Seahawks have 20. The double pick is it's got to be coveted a little bit. You're not getting Will Levis if they go there, right? And you're building him probably from a Bucks point of view. That would take him out of the Raiders playbook.
Mhm.
And it would make Christian Gonzalez or Brian Branch perfectly acceptable at 7.
Yeah. Yeah, and exactly. So if they don't go Will Levis, then I think those are some.
I got an idea. You ship off Mike Evans somewhere and you trade Hunter Renfro to the Bucks. It won't happen that way. It's
No.
okay. No.
But yeah, so I think those are some solid names that they could go for at 7 if they need to go after DB, or if they decide to. If they get rid of Hunter Renfro, they could grab somebody at 38 or 70 wide receiver wise. Honestly, at 100, they could be a team like we were talking about with Foster Moreau. He's on his last year.
Yep.
So I don't know if they would go 38 for tight end since they have other needs, but 70, 100 again, wide receiver, tight end, whatever. So yeah, they're in a decent spot, and I think that last season they actually, their defense kind of made it so that they weren't able to win games, but they were in a decent amount of games where they just, the score was insanely high and they couldn't keep up, or the other team was able to make that late run and they just didn't have enough time to come back, whatever. So I think that they're in a decent spot I have them at 9 and 8. And I think with the pieces they have and the coaching staff, I think that's more than reasonable.
Yeah. 9 and 8 should be the goal for them.
Yeah.
To be honest. I mean, you have great pieces there. Defense is my question, like you say. So
yeah.
All right, bring us to our final. We're gonna take it to the final corner, the home stretch.
Yep, here we go. Wrapping it up with the Broncos, the Cleveland Browns of the
AFC.
West.
The AFC West, yes. They are stuck, although they've done very good this offseason.
Yeah, they actually had some cap space, so they were at
big
33.8.
splash.
Yeah, they made some nice splashes. They're down to 8.4, so they used a good chunk of it. Yeah, so spots to fill, tackle, some defensive positions, defensive line, and linebacker. They do not have a first or second round pick. They do have back to back, as you were sort of talking about, kind of a nice situation to be in the third round, 67th,
Yep.
68th. That's the top of the third round, so that's kind of nice. They have a fourth, fifth, and a sixth. So they are in a better situation than the Cleveland Browns, I think.
Yeah.
Especially sort of team build wise. But I threw trade assets Sutton/Judy. I think that if they could keep Judy and trade Sutton and find a wide receiver at 67, 68, or maybe get somebody in return. I don't think Sutton has panned out to be what they want. When he was by himself, he showed that he had some flashes, but I think with Judy there, that they should kind of lean into Judy as their one and get a solid. I mean, they have what, Tim Patrick, they have Hamler, KJ Hamler.
Kendall
They have
Hinton.
Kendall Hinton. Thank you. That's the other guy I was trying to think of. They have some decent, wide receiver. I don't know if they're wide receiver twos. They're definitely wide receiver threes. So if they could fill in with a solid wide receiver two and get rid of Sutton, then they're not kind of
It's
playing this weird game with some like 1A, 1B situation.
the tough spot for them is they've shopped Sutton, and there are teams calling on Judy.
Right. And I totally get
Jude,
that because Judy's the better value right here.
he is, and Sutton has been over the recent couple weeks has been very, I want to play where I'm appreciated more or less. This team has holes in the secondary. They're
Right.
missing a cornerback. They're missing a safety. They don't have draft capital for any of that.
Yeah.
You almost have to play the other two. You're not really worried about tight end Greg Dulcich staying healthy. You have another good pass catcher, and then you have a third option in one of the wide receivers at most times.
Yeah.
I like, and even at times you can pull out the hidden card up your sleeve in Samaje Perine for a pass catching back, who will probably end up playing that role to a certain extent. Shipping off Sutton for some draft capital would not be a dumb move.
No.
And
They need to do something.
there are teams that would give him a second round pick this year for Cortland Sutton.
Yeah.
They've signed a lot of folks. I wouldn't even necessarily super worry about interior D or linebacker. Bringing back Alec Littleton was fine. Zach Allen, hugely underrated signing. 3 years for $45 million. Came over from the Cardinals. Love it. I mean, that defense is going to look a little bit better. It's just hard to say because it was a tough defense last year.
Right.
I think that's the smart move for them. Could you do it the other way and force it that way? Yeah, you could not trade and that'd be perfectly fine, I think. But you would have there's holes.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I mean, in the retooling, I kind of wrote similar to Cleveland. They need to do some restructuring. The Russell Wilson contract has kind of put them in a bit of a corner, but they are in actually a better spot. They've made some nice moves. They still have some cap. They have trade assets. They're in a little bit of a better position if they play their cards right. And they have a great coach now that hopefully will be able to get Wilson back to his, I don't want to say prime, but back up there. So not having those first and second round picks kind of hurts, but I think being high in the third isn't too shabby. It's hard to say who will follow them there, so they're kind of looking for value, best player available. If they do trade Sutton and they don't get a wide receiver, like you said, that probably makes more sense for them to get some DBs. They could snag Booty, Tillman, Rashid Rice at 67, 68, some other names that could potentially help them build their future. Charbonnet, A-Chain, Hendon Hooker. Those are kind of just like value best players picks at that point. If you're going for needs, then they're kind of looking at people like Keanu Benton, Siaki, Ika probably. Cody Mach, Dayon Henley, and Matthew Bergeron could sort of fill some of their needs. And then to wrap it all up, I have them with a record of 8-9. I wanted to go higher.
I do too. Sean Payton is
exactly
a hell of a coach.
Yeah. And their defense was very solid last season, and they still have a lot of those pieces. So 8-9 feels like a floor for them. And it's definitely conservative. I don't know what's up with Wilson, and if we see more of the same next season, which I don't think we will. I'm hesitant.
Yeah, it's a big question mark. I like the Chargers wild card, Chiefs out of that division to be the division winner.
Mhm.
And then just have those two teams. I don't like the Broncos without some help this offseason.
Yeah.
Just being honest, they have to do something. And it sadly might be trading Cortland Sutton,
Right.
which is crazy. But that's going to wrap up the finality of Magic 8-Ball series. We have talked about all 32 teams.
We did it.
in 2 episodes. Any final words, Taylor?
No.
No.
Let's get
All
out of
right.
here.
We're going to be back next week with another mock draft. Now that teams have kind of pointed us in a direction again, it'll be interesting. But for Taylor, for Derek, this has been episode 47, Magic 8-Ball segment, of Fantasy Flyer. Listen to some Bob Barker. Have a good week.
Peace out, y'all.
Oh, you're not going to listen to Bob Barker because I don't have the sound on. Let's try that one more time. Here we go.
Here we go down the aisle.
Reminding you, help control the pet population. Have your pets spayed or neutered. Goodbye, everybody.